Have you ever noticed how easily things get in? Anxiety, dread, and outrage from scrolling the day's headlines. Someone's passing opinion that rattles around in your head for hours. A new idea, a new way to look at reality that sounded insightful at the time, but quietly derailed your direction. How about all those images that sneak right past your rational mind and become part of your limbic library, the archive of your imagination? It's subtle. You value being open-minded, caring, spiritually attuned, intellectually curious. You've trained yourself to stay available to ideas, to compassion, to your environment, maybe even to things like spiritual downloads and subtle communication. And adopting that posture of openness is a strength until it isn't. Because being receptive without discretion doesn't just wear down your nervous system, it distorts your perception of reality and can seriously mess up your inner compass. This is Amara Strand, and welcome back to my podcast. Today's episode is about recognizing the hidden cost of overexposure, emotional, energetic, and even intellectual. We'll explore why taking on a default policy of openness can leave you unanchored, scattered, and susceptible to influence that masquerades as wisdom. And more importantly, we'll explore the alternative, what it's like when you make the switch to energetic self-authority and how that changes everything. We generally think of openness as a virtue. Are you an open person? We like to think of ourselves as intellectually and emotionally open. Openness is often held up as one of those hallmarks of the evolved person. You're encouraged to be more emotionally open, energetically receptive, mentally flexible. You may have grown used to welcoming a wide range of ideas, instinctively holding space for the perspectives of others. What starts as a genuine invitation to connect and explore can quietly solidify into a mandate, especially if you've come to believe that being open and receptive is a virtue. Any kind of filtering, redirecting, or energetic containment risks being labeled as resistance, defensiveness, or avoidance. And over time, even the impulse to pause or choose can feel suspect. And so you stay open. You stay open to ideas that are not compatible with your well-being. You stay open to feedback, to requests, to emotionally loaded hooks. You stay open to the stream of news and just behind it a wave of voices rushing in to tell you what it means. Influencers, commentators, so-called thought leaders, even friends. You don't just take in the events themselves, which would be enough of a strain with everything that's going on right now. But you absorb how other people are interpreting and spinning the news, the urgency, the emotional charge, the personal bias. After all, the world is ending. Don't you care? And soon, it's not just what's happening in the world, it's how you're expected to feel about it, what you should think, and which side you should take. Eventually, your inner signal gets crowded out, not obliterated, just blurred. The line between your own authentic responses and everything you've absorbed becomes difficult to track. The burden of openness becomes something you have to manage. You become overexposed. This is what happens when openness is unmoored from discernment and personal authority. But here's the truth. There are no inherent virtues. Receptivity, compassion, humility, generosity, open-mindedness. These aren't virtues in and of themselves. They're capacities, but not ends, not destinations or goals in and of themselves. The real virtue is self-mastery, the discipline to know when to offer softness and when to hold firm, when openness is wise and when it's just capitulation. Without discernment, even the most beautiful qualities become liabilities. True self-mastery is about having and using the ability to open and close with intention. It's about filtering what enters your system, rejecting what's harmful, irrelevant, or just plain not for you, and knowing when to direct your energy inward instead of outward, even when everything out there is so compelling, so demanding, so seductive. You are the steward of your own human instrument. No one else can filter for you. No one else can guard the gate. You can choose not to accept this responsibility, but what you can't do is delegate it. It's just you. So, have you taken on openness as a virtue in itself? It's easy to do. If you've ever gone through a period of intentionally being more receptive, emotionally, energetically, intellectually, psychically, or maybe even pharmacologically, you likely felt an initial sense of expansion. If you used to be emotionally guarded, or if you were used to orbiting around familiar conclusions, opening yourself may have felt like breath, like warmth, like opening a window and letting fresh air move through you. But what begins as expansion can slide into overexposure. The openness that once felt generous and expansive now starts to feel like fatigue, like noise. You're absorbing too much, too many signals, too many needs, too many narratives. And now, if you carefully audit your various internal systems, you'll see that your system is congested. And that's the first hidden cost of overexposing yourself: energetic congestion and depletion. You've internalized the principle of openness, but not the counterbalancing skill of discrimination, focus, and discipline. Another consequence of being open by default is diminished discernment. When you let in too much too freely, the internal signal-to-noise ratio drops. Not every belief system, opinion, extrasensory insight, or emotional current deserves equal consideration. But we live in a state of hyper-connectivity and accelerated messaging, and default openness often means flattening everything to the same level of urgency and importance. You can't navigate these currents without discernment. This overwhelm is especially acute now. The churn of news, crises, pivots, and trends has sped up to become something approaching monstrous. With so much going on, staying open can start to feel like an obligation, as if remaining available to the deluge is the only way to stay connected, to stay humane, to stay aware. But there's a difference between staying aware and allowing yourself to be flooded. You're overexposed, and then you begin to blur. Your sense of your true, authentic self, it doesn't vanish, but it becomes harder to access. Your clarity becomes distorted by oversaturation. You forget who you are in relation to all the things you've let in, and all the things that continue to ask for your consideration. And your inner compass, the one that knows what life stream you want to orient yourself toward, becomes weighted by external agendas. And finally, maybe the most invisible cost of all is the accumulation of unexamined ideas. Being open to new concepts is a sign of intelligence, but indiscriminate openness means you end up running belief systems in the background that aren't actually yours. Worldviews you never consciously adopted start shaping your decisions, internalizing a spiritual platitude, a cultural trend, a seductive philosophy. It can seem harmless at first, maybe even exciting, but over time they become filters you didn't design, and they can take you on costly detours, offering false promises, posing unnecessary challenges, or inviting you to commit to irrelevant goals. Not every idea, path, or philosophy is for you. This seems obvious enough, but trust me, it's not. There are ideas that are beautiful, powerful, revered, and still not meant for you. Here's what you have to know. Not every philosophy is compatible with your system. And part of self-mastery is learning to recognize that incompatibility before it costs you something essential. Take, for example, teachings like Zen Buddhism or non-duality. These aren't fringe ideologies. They're time-honored perspectives that have liberated and clarified the lives of countless people. You may have entered these liberating streams yourself. But for some, trying to metabolize the truth that everything is empty, or that there is no doer, or that the self has no ultimate reality, has quite the opposite effect. Instead of illumination, they experience collapse. Their desire to live, to engage, to care thins out. They're no longer oriented toward life, but neither are they oriented toward awakening. And they get lost. Their system begins to unravel, and not in a good way. And it's not because the teaching is wrong, nor is it because the person is weak or lacking. It's simply a poor fit, an idea too austere for their inner architecture, a medicine that wasn't suited to their constitution. And I offer these two examples because they are highly compatible with my system. I experienced only profound peace, illumination, and liberation in their contemplation and practice. But I also know that some people become deeply and sometimes lethally nihilistic when they try to encompass these teachings. It's simply not compatible. And discernment isn't just a spiritual nicety, it's self-care. The health of your system depends on your ability to ask, does this resonate because it's true for me, or am I trying to force it down because other people told me it's the highest truth or that it worked for them? You might even mistakenly believe that you need to alter yourself to make yourself compatible. No, you don't have to digest what doesn't nourish. If a teaching or method is true and valuable, you can be certain that it exists in the world in many different forms so that people with different systems can find a compatible version. Being incompatible with a teaching doesn't mean you're categorically excluded from the treasure at the heart of it, but discernment is everything. Think of energetic self-mastery as a fiduciary duty to yourself. And you're the only one with the authority and ability to care for your system. No one else can do it for you. It's not about closing yourself off or retreating. It's about remembering that it's your duty to yourself to filter, to exclude, to discriminate. Your attention, your energy, your belief structures, the sacred screen of your imagination, they're not a public commons. They belong to you, and you must take care of them. So this posture of default receptivity, it isn't innate. It's taught, it's encouraged, and often moralized. For many people, it begins when you're a kiddo. No surprise there, right? Maybe you were rewarded for being the calm one, the good listener, the one who could sense the emotional weather in the room, the one who was always willing to try new things. That kind of hyper-attunement may have earned you praise, validation, and even a measure of safety. And later, you entered spiritual, therapeutic, or self-development spaces where sensitivity was exalted. The more open you were, the more evolved you seemed. Openness was framed as a sign of growth, of wisdom, of higher consciousness. And in time, this quality, being open, receptive, available, became folded into your identity. Not just something you could choose to do, but a way you should be. It started to feel like an unquestionable virtue. And this may have been reinforced by what you saw around you. Have you ever noticed that spiritual attainment has a brand, an aesthetic, a look, a tone, a way of speaking and being? So maybe you internalize some of this enlightenment aesthetic. We model ourselves after what we see, and just take a moment to conjure up an image of the spiritually advanced or even enlightened people you admire and follow. Consider what image and feel and aesthetic is presented to you. We unknowingly internalize these things, and this becomes a composite image of what it looks like to be spiritually awake. And here's the elephant in the room, something that affects all of us. Beyond your personal history or encounters with spiritual teachings, you also have to contend with the cultural milieu. We are all being conditioned, socially, algorithmically, ideologically, to stay open to updates, open to outrage, to the unrelenting stream of emergencies that define the modern news cycle. This conditioning isn't neutral. It feeds on your attention, your empathy, your nervous system, and it quietly imposes a moral hierarchy. To switch off is to not care, and to not care, even about things that you cannot change, is recast as a moral failing. But really think about it. Is there something virtuous about being perpetually emotionally impacted by things you have no intention or ability to respond to meaningfully? In this environment, discernment starts to look suspicious. Discrimination itself has become a bad word. I want you to reclaim this word for its higher meaning, the capacity to separate the irrelevant from the relevant, the wanted from the unwanted, the beneficial from the deleterious. according to your own authentic values. Your well-being, the integrity of your human vehicle, and your capacity to offer anything of value depends on this variability. Now, there are a few things you're going to have to do before you can really begin to take back control of your energy and inner domain. First, you have to give yourself permission. Before filtering, before sorting, before choosing what to take in, you need to reclaim the right to do so. Because that's the part we often skip. We go straight to, how do I protect myself? How do I know what's mine? Without pausing to recognize you may not even believe you're allowed to close the gates. Taking back permission is the first act of self-leadership. It's saying, I'm the one in charge of this system. I'm responsible for what comes in, what stays, and what shapes me. And that doesn't make me unkind or apathetic. It makes me trustworthy. And once you've reclaimed permission, the next step is reclaiming your ability. Really consider this. Most of us have never seen this kind of self-regulation modeled. Not in our families, not in our communities, not in the spiritual or personal development spaces we've wandered through. So we don't imagine it's normal or possible or ours to claim. Instead, we live inside a story that says, this is just how I am. I'm sensitive. I overthink. I absorb energy. I get overwhelmed. I self-medicate. I can't escape the scroll. As if this is fixed, as if there's no other way to move through the world, because everyone is pretty much like this too. But it isn't your nature. It's a skill and determination gap, and that gap exists for good reason. You weren't taught how to regulate your system, not your thoughts, not your feelings, not your imagination, not your energy. You weren't taught how to discern what's useful and what's invasive, what's yours to carry and what never belonged to you. And then there's the third layer, the cultural current. It's a tide of messaging that says you are defined by your wounds, that power and actually being just fine are suspicious, and that self-mastery is another sneaky mask for repression. You're encouraged to self-analyze endlessly, to peel yourself apart, but there's no invitation to rise, no expectation that you could one day know how to run your own system. And yet you can. You have the capacity to regulate your own field internally, emotionally, mentally. And if you begin to fall back on the idea that sure, spiritually advanced people can do this, masters with exceptional abilities can do this, then I must remind you that I started doing this as a child. I started teaching myself how to do this without any external guidance or support. And I taught this to my own daughter from the time she could talk. So I know from experience, this is part of your human skill set, not something out of reach, not something extraordinary, not even something spiritual. It's just human. You can track what's happening within you as clearly as you perceive what's around you. This is what it feels like to be lucid and composed around your own center of gravity in the midst of a demanding and increasingly strange, unrecognizable world. And this is where choosing what you allow into your system becomes self-care. Your attention isn't an open resource. Neither is your energy or your mental landscape. You're not obligated to extend hospitality to every worldview, every belief system, every emotionally loaded headline. And no one else can maintain your human system for you. You are the sole caretaker. So ask yourself honestly, how well are you fulfilling this duty to self? How dedicated are you to becoming a professional human? Someone who understands their own system well enough to regulate and care for it. Because it's just you. You can pray to guides and angels and ancestors and gods, but in the end, you alone are the one who is charged with looking after the integrity and well-being of your human vehicle. And when you do, things feel crisp. There's space around your thoughts. You're not running 15 open tabs filled with other people's ideas, hopes, priorities, or imagery. You have room to think, room to respond, room to be fully yourself. And that's when you become radiant. What does that mean? Do you become shiny or dazzling? No, it means your internal domain has stabilized and you're able to radiate your energy, your authentic self. It's quiet, not some kind of energetic light show. You're no longer in a state of reaction. no longer letting your environment impose and imprint on you. And that allows your authentic energy to build itself back up. It then naturally becomes a kind of beacon, a steady, radiant center of light. So take a moment and consider, are you ready to give yourself permission to be more intentional about what you let in? Are you ready to take care of your beautiful human vehicle, like someone who knows what it's worth? When your inner world is shaped by your own discernment, not just everything that arrives, you learn the true power and value of your energy and intention. You begin to live as a professional human, skilled, self-directed, and sovereign. And that's what I focus on. Not how to escape the world or transcend it, but how to meet it on your own terms, to shape your own experience with skill and intention. These are real tools and real fluency in managing your own system. And that's the work. If you're ready to explore what being a professional human really means, there's more. You'll find other episodes like this in the archive, and if you're ready to go deeper, I invite you to explore the programs I've built for exactly this kind of shift. And there are other ways to transform and cultivate your inner landscape. I have another YouTube channel just for guided meditations. You'll find all the links to meditations, lush binaural sound baths, and my in-depth programs pinned in the comments. Thanks for spending this time with me, and we'll talk again soon.